The towering structure where monsters once lived is now a terrifying catastrophe that arrived too late for the many years that passed before this new disaster struck. Thousands of creatures spilled their full bellies out onto the ground as if they were made of honeycomb, while humanity watched in helpless fear from the edge of its dying world. With little hope left, a group of people known as the progenitors emerged and turned into the very first generation of transcendence. The villagers fought bravely against a giant monster and finally threw away the dangerous tower they were trapped in. They stopped the monsters because humanity finally secured victory. These legendary heroes stood like ancient pillars for generations, keeping their souls safe forever while they vanished into the deep dark where the living gods lived to start over again. Time has swept away a few hundred years since that moment. As a kid, Minato could barely read when the stories of his heroes told him in the library's book about how that blade master killed 10,000 monsters with one mighty punch. The hero who found a hidden key could cast every magical trick imaginable without making a single sound. That moment when the hero and legend felt so huge and big that he wanted to leave history behind. It was just another day for your dreamer. When a student finally crosses the threshold into the realm of being truly transcendent, they often find themselves standing at one of many specific markers scattered across their path, like a glowing star or a hidden key waiting for them to unlock it. He vowed to live until he himself became truly worthy of being remembered as his great-grandparents. He looked at me with a wide, happy grin and said, at least that's what he thought. The news has finally arrived. They all cheer when the final test comes up. No one really succeeded when Minato got the signal that they didn't get enough to approve the request. Smiling face with smiling eyes, even while everyone else laughed so hard that their eyes rolled back. The boy remained completely still and tearful as he sat alone in the corner of the room. He has many friends who wanted to tidy the room before we all go out and party. He laughed at the joke because failing a job hunt isn't enough to be called transcendent. He could only take the exam one more time. It had been his last shot at getting in. He won't ever become a hunter. No matter how high his passing score climbed, a sudden wave of doubt still ate his mind because he couldn't figure out why that specific number mattered more than his actual ability to graduate. It felt like a foolish blood test when the boy looked at Minato, yet Minato cried because everything was truly unfair, and what he really craved for himself was exactly what his ancestors had done too. He looks out from the window and hears a shout about rushing, but his heart stops just as much as anyone else because he knows this isn't about fame or attention. It was solely for him to do so. The girls can't help but stare at that handsome new prodigy, who truly makes everyone's face turn up. Everyone was discussing the legendary A-rank hunter, Kazaki, so Kazaki smiled and apologized gently when he caused a fuss. Minato's classmates are mad that he took forever to get ready and kept waiting to become a star in their show. The boys are yelling at Kaze because he treats them so poorly when they try to help. A terrifying stare from the hunter made everyone jump, and suddenly, dozens of reporters appeared behind him with a grin on their faces, clearly expecting more trouble than this. One guy was so stunned after seeing a young man who graduated from the academy that he couldn't help but wonder why they wouldn't want to follow him home for the day. Then the man says, "What do you think I should do? I'm going to take that picture and put it on my magazine cover." The hunter nods at the hunter and says, "It sounds like a good idea, but I don't feel it's looking that good." Right behind Minato watched him. And after all, the duo had made it to that point where one of them was instantly recognized as a genius who earned top marks on everything. But wait, Kei isn't the only one calling him a jerk. He was even the one who used to bully him in the past. As every student from Minato trembled while watching them film a class together, he wondered just how much more embarrassing that had been. One reporter asks who is next to Hunter, and Hunter replies that he's an old friend even though he doesn't know Minato's name, while someone else whispers something about him. Proudly, the school star claims the boy was always getting into trouble and came to him for advice, saying he used to take time out to help him. Even though he claimed help was enough for the local people, that money truly wasn't appreciated. No matter what Kei did, he kept stealing everything and refused to give a single cent back at all. He's told that this might be the worst year in his entire life. The hunters are being hailed as flawless when they meet the press, praising every inch of their work from the moment they step onto the stage to the last detail they show off. He laughs with a grin, knowing the truthfully ambitious man won't let him fail anyone. So he promises to make sure his name stays among great historical figures forever. The man chuckled and said, "Mato is truly lucky to have Kaizai take care of him," while the other spoke up, adding a sweet note that the little one deserves gratitude for every good turn. The tightness in his chest made him feel a little jittery and scared when everyone was watching. He didn't even get a word out before the liar reminded him that his exam had already failed. He held back his face until it cracked into a terrifying grin as he demanded that the world not laugh at this truly awful situation. He felt like a disgrace after the entire year had passed. Minato was clutching his head as he tried to shake off a bully who held him down by sheer force of intimidation. In a moment where flashlights buzzed on his cheeks, he spoke softly to Kes, telling her she had been right all along and that he felt no sorrow at all because every day was just another beautiful chapter in his life now. When the hunter finishes his work, he lets the man walk away immediately because they've got very little time left to talk. The host Cass invites everyone over to celebrate by planting his prize trophies in a garden that delights the entire crew, turning an empty space into a feast for all involved. It turned out nobody cared about Minato at all, so they didn't even try to recall its name before pretending it wasn't necessary for their tale to start. To a loser, it really doesn't matter who's in their heart, because the Real thing comes from nowhere and never changes when you're down. So when the kids grow up and start hunting, everyone turns their eyes to them, because people always remember their names. The boy whimpered and looked at his hands in a panic as suddenly a voice shouted his name into the room, causing him to instantly leap back. The bully told Manhwa he had to run to the shrine right after school, and that's when she felt so scared she wondered if they were going to take her away. Kay smiled with a fake grin and asked, "Do you still think we're going to pass?" The boy told the Hunter Association all about how much well he said in his talk. Minato looks surprised as the group replies, he only wants to play nice and look cool. The reporter plans a final shot at that spot before talking anything else later on. Kay kept her voice tight and said the moment he got back in line that she was going to say it again. Still, Minato hesitates whether to actually believe that person's words. Despite not wanting to become a tool for raising the hunter's profile, that moment could be just what he needs to flip his story on its head. He thought deeply before stepping forward, feeling a big change in his heart, and now he knew exactly what to do next. He wants to be the best protector in this new age and vows to fight all those evil monsters until he becomes too tired to do it anymore, because his perfect look means he can't go anywhere else without breaking down. By the time everyone finished shooting, the reporters thanked Kais for letting him handle everything so he could finally rest after a long day. The hunter waits patiently as the crowd begins to scatter, knowing that by then they will all be gone and he can finally enjoy his quiet moment alone. He jumps into the shrine where the knight waits for him alone. "Does your dear servant see if anyone has entered the door?" The boys smiled and told their master that everything was right, so the star leader let them run and pick up whatever was left behind. Suddenly, a whisper rumbles behind him asking if he really knows why he's going on that treasure hunt and not hiding it. The Minotals are stuck with their loot, while the A-rank hunter questions whether anyone would care at all if they knew where they buried themselves. He threw a mighty blast of force and kicked the floor so hard that rock pieces flew everywhere. A giant man in a faded suit and tired face tells everyone that nothing special happens with these decayed versions of himself. He told everyone that selling the items would make him rich, claiming his grandfather was wrong about the progenitor theory, yet those heroes had always been so amazing that wishing they could be them made him feel even more hopeful. He's still standing there, hoping that the promise keeps itself intact. Suddenly, a sudden rush of fury filled the air around him. Kay was a master dodging, so he found the perfect angle to get the real man down even when the bastard tried to charge forward. The superstar asked if the boy had forgotten whom he was speaking to. Minato instantly panicked and thought that one of those blows could have been fatal. His lackey called out, and they were back at home with all their treasures in the bag. Even though Minato was hurt by the falling tree, he couldn't get away from worrying. The superstar reaches out to feel a strange, shimmering energy around them, wondering exactly where those glowing things came from while simultaneously thinking they might live in that very state forever. The teacher pulled the boy's shirt back until his neck hit the wall, shouting, "I didn't need anyone so stupid. I just wanted you falling for that fake news." He found a secret smile when someone spoke of a boy who had already smiled to make him laugh again. The lone hero had finally lost his only dream, so he turned his back on the world and took away everything a real person would want in their life. The hunter said it might be a big deal for the front page today. The news report promises to reveal how a 3-year-old student stole something precious from the town's old home. When the police arrive, they find a suspicious boy among them and decide to take him back to the author for questions. Minato is trembling with fear because he knows this might be the very end of his life. Yet the star confirms his identity isn't at all a concern. Suddenly, the boy slips from the edge like a stone thrown by wind, plunging headfirst into the dark pool, where questions about whether he'll ever be remembered grow heavy in his lungs, and then the sky opens up to reveal swirling orbs of light dancing around him. So, suddenly they turn into weird creatures and run away from everyone else. The strangers debated if that boy was indeed the boat they were desperate to catch to get their wishes true. Finally, The duo revealed their true names as ancient spirits who truly belong to the very beginning of creation, and that moment made the little boy feel a sudden sense of wonder, like his world opened up for the first time. He stirs up his mind, asking himself, what happens to these bright lights and loud voices when they turn out to be just ordinary people? One old spirit whispered, saying his own scars were just a shadow of the infinite dark that swallowed everything inside him. Even if those marks didn't give anyone magic on their own, they could hold all the powers in them. Then Manhwa asks, which one would you pick to become our bond? He explains that every person she encounters is a supreme master of their own kind, a mage or a martial artist, someone who can grant her powers far beyond any she could ever hope for. The spirit once more asked for a desire, but Minato knew perfectly which wish was truly his. He's tired of bullying and now refuses to live in a place where anyone can shove him around. He wanted that absolute power to wipe away every scrap of shame he'd ever had along the way. The old wizard shouted that they had to run as fast as possible to find a perfect match, while the young boy thought it was his lucky shot to become the only one who truly understood everything. The progenitors think their ambitious plans are extraordinary, but fear the vessel isn't big enough to hold everything. Minato stands ready to make a bold move before everyone else knows he's already on the spot, forcing them to wait while he says something that makes no sense. A man who refuses to listen to orders gets pulled by every spirit he ever feels before a curse touches his skin. The crowd goes wild because the boys act so rude. A magical circle begins to glow under the boy's feet, making him feel like he is walking into a story that is finally beginning. Kay looked up and saw a red mark on his shirt before anyone else noticed. The pool of water starts climbing up right where its light shines. The hooded henchman pulls a tiny umbrella out of his coat, stopping the superstar from slipping into the rain while he laughs nervously. The crowd gasped as Minato's body began to lift into the air like a tiny, glowing star. A little boy stands right in front of them and suddenly loses his stare at the bully who used to humiliate him. The spiky-haired man gasped as he said that Minato was much tougher to fight than a cockroach. He's holding a book up and squinting hard at the page, trying to find where that last word goes. The bullies noticed exactly then. They burst out laughing as soon as they saw the truth about what was happening, asking him again if he truly believed he'd hurt them with that stick. Could told the crowd to hold their breath and let him take a deep breath, knowing that watching too long was dangerous. He ordered the boy's head taken so it won't ever come back. The tall guy with spikes held out his hand and made magic happen to summon a cool-looking weapon for him to use on himself. He shoved off, asking Minato if he ever remembered how always scoring top marks in sword exams made the boy feel so honored. Unshakable, the ex-leader asked if he truly believed that sword comes from a true master of the blade. The bully charges at him when he refuses to listen. Minato quickly dodged a punch to save the day, though the very next blow sent him flying as he was sliced off the battlefield alongside his own blade. Minato stares at the sword because he knows exactly where to look and can't help but think the man who pulled it away is a coward. Once again, the boy repeats his exact words. After all, the man who wanted to find out what truly set his greatsword apart was the one who finally understood why it felt so precious. The giant kid won't get any time to use that powerful green spell called the Sight of Total Destruction, because he's already got the second-grade class of a legend in the way his eyes are locked on him. In a shimmering yellow glow, Minato stirs his finger and declares, "I'm way too slow," and that spells Hadad. The bully felt a sudden shock as he realized his secret was out before anyone else even knew what happened next. A powerful blast tears through the room, sending the massive man tumbling onto the floor and burning his skin like a pig's fur before he finally lands. Oh no! Kagotsi is completely stunned by the terrifying idea that he could casually turn an ordinary guy into a god-killer with just a thin twig and magic, while still having to wait for his opponent to speak first before they even know what's happening. You think that ancient warrior could crush 10,000 creatures in one breath? Yes, but you're missing his real magic. The old wizard who stumbled upon ancient books and cast spells that only he could see spoke nothing at all. The ghosts that used to soar above the clouds now stay trapped inside Minato's chest. There are 160 in the whole group. When Minato thought about the moment, he remembered how a giant name could be made to fall short and become truly legendary. Now he's saying his name won't stay on anyone's mind because he decided never to put it back in the stories, so people only hear about those legends. The sky behind the boy turns a deep cobalt blue, casting a soft glow that makes his whole body feel suddenly heavier and brighter with power. The entire world knows that Minato feels a deep resonance from his ancestor's spirit while clutching the faint, ghostly shadow of the void. He felt those emotions so hearingly thick and bright in their fullness. He listened to the echoes of past battles as one marvels at how few runes survived, while another whispers that they have now truly forgotten their freedom for centuries. Minato loved reading the stories from his ancestors and spent countless hours learning them. Yet today he can't stop thinking about how they've finally become part of his own soul. He lets out a breath of relief, pushing back the heavy lids to see every single face and action in that crowded room at once, letting the moment melt into a warm, full smile. As their faces begin to change, they have to figure out exactly which hand holds the power to take charge of the boy's body. The swordsman called out, and the young man jumped up in surprise as he heard his voice. The tall man, Raikiro Hananoi, grinned as he saw 10,000 monsters vanish with a single burst of power, declaring that his fame will live on even after all those years, a legend that never truly dies. He then asked what the little boy wanted to do. Minato asked if it was really about that final bully, but the hero shook his head and said clearly. The swordsman points toward the real issue and wonders what he's going to do about it. Oh yes. The chosen one suddenly woke up and finally understood what was happening all along. Even while walking around, that very nervous feeling makes Casa feel compelled to call him down as a loser. The star performer pulls out his blade and challenges the A-rank hunter directly, whispering that teaching him is more important than winning. He didn't have time to finish, and suddenly he was knocked straight in the face. Oh no, that forceful shove must have knocked that bully straight into the dirt and sent him flying. Minato doesn't care about her feelings. He's just trying to get everyone away from the fight. A dark aura suddenly spills out of the backpack as if a storm was breaking inside it. The sun was getting hotter, and the sky started to glow brighter with every passing second. As long as Minato keeps feeling amazed, Raikiro's grin turns into a proud smile of his own making. Oh wow, the whole city is right about exploding into total chaos at once. The big three-headed black dog howled and ran off into the dark woods fast enough to hide from everyone. A giant monster slams down on every corner and wall he steps on. A roar roared out and slammed the heavy door shut against his face. The men's scowls turned into fierce growls as they charged toward the monster, who finally fell to his knees under their sheer weight before scrambling back into the shadows. Kirasag, the elite of the ranks, takes down a giant beast with one sharp kick and makes everyone jump in shock. A man stood up, took a deep breath, and said, "Thanks for asking me about KZ." But now he remembers the star said an interview would be great for the guild's standing. As he handed over the report, his eye caught a strange look in the corner that made him wonder if it was some kind of monster. What kind of emergency are you asking about right now? As the moment of truth passed by, he spun around in surprise while his heart raced. A team of boys crumples into the dirt as one friend asks, "What's going on?" The crushing pressure is so intense that even high schoolers like A in class can't stay standing, making everyone wonder if this S-rank monster needs a massive scale attack. It's becoming more powerful as it sweeps through every corner of the world. The ancient forest whispering secrets is right behind her as Kay lies flat on the grass, ready to face whatever comes next. A scary shape stands right in front of his face and makes his heart skip a beat. The towering black monster with a dozen eyes and long tentacles was spotted right under the Starkeeper's backpack. Terrified, he shouted to Minato, who explained that it wasn't him, but instead his own mistake in hurting the ancient guardians. The tower boss monster that once held your secret stash has finally slipped away, leaving behind only the empty containers and a quiet treasure hunt ahead. Rikiro was telling the story of how some monsters sneaked away before dying with a strange power called hibernation. It was a terrible sight, the heavy darkness that followed just before they reached their destination. The world seems to open up as if the planet had millions of little eyes watching from afar, and our place within that vast sea of stars is not just a single rank. It's perhaps one of the most significant in all of existence. It's like a poisonous fog rolls across the world, wiping away anyone who stands within a mile of it. Back when even small insects were everywhere. Kay whispers to his friend that he's leaving safely, while the mysterious swordsman warns him that any sudden movement could accidentally turn him into the very monster they're fighting. The creature lunges at the giant with a claw, and suddenly, the star shines in a field of pure terror. He looked at his broken sword and realized the victory he won never came true. His heart was screaming because he had been swallowed whole by a giant monster with a long tentacle that pulled away from him to drain everything left in his body. Minato sat there quietly, watching the other man as Indifferent gave a tight, almost imperceptible laugh and nodded for him to go on. Then Raikiro shouts, "What does that little guy think about taking over me?" The swordsman stepped forward, whispering that he'd witnessed his master fight before, promising he could show the Hinois how sharp they were when they needed it most. Benadu said he wouldn't mind taking a ride, so that long-haired man was completely happy because he could just sit there for free. But the other people won't let him leave that precious vessel alone. It wasn't just a big surprise that the little boy decided to give up his whole body for everyone. Even though the odds are stacked against him, he insists on breaking through them all to finally see if anyone can truly surpass his own strength. Rio feels defeated because he can't stop seeing that little brat grabbing his chance to take advantage. A swordman tells us that the bite he took might be bigger than what his teeth could actually hold. Minato treats the boy like a puppet in a war zone, and together they are poised to crush it all down. The monster swung a quick spears and sawed off one of its legs as it was cut in half by the weapon. Unfortunately, the little boy lost his stick during this adventure. Minato leaps into action with a powerful kick to stop the monster before it can move. A long, jagged tentacle ripped free from a monstrous face full of eyes and tears. The boy rushes to grab the branch off the ground while a second hero steps in to take over, and then a third spirit joins the fight. You won't see any bad guys leave because the monster got all messed up after those lots of hits. Minato pulls out the backpack while the archer's turn begins, for the war hasn't ended yet, and the arrow strikes the beast. The bright green liquid even splashed onto his face as he ran. The man who wiped his face suddenly jumps into action again, unleashing a barrage of powerful blows from every single master at once. Raichiro holds his own broken sword against the fallen Kai as they fight together. Before the tentacles could even make contact with Minato, the creature froze itself right in the air. Oh, good heavens! That was such a wild jump. The Master Mage did it all on command and let the kid soar straight up into the air right there in front of everyone. The newest fighter stands tall and grips a mighty blade, while Bikira, their partner of choice, lifts a massive sea storm up to smash through it. A bolt of lightning shoots out and cuts through the monster right between its eyes. Manhwa opened her eyes and smiled as the world seemed brighter than before. The dark settles with a soft, gentle fall when the full moon finally lets its heavy shadow away. The lone crow watches as the scary monster steps forward. He heard the bad guy's name and ran out of town as he was already dead. The surprise came when a powerful hunter vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the crow taking up his place and filming the scene. He looked up and asked, "Did you actually see the boy from the hunter training school who made me smile?" He wanted to catch up with that young man right there before he left. Midori Ikehara stands tall, looking out as he dials his own name from Mr. Director, who hasn't touched him all this time. Midori checks the monster's record to see it labeled Shrank, and then points out that the guy who got him killed is actually a high schooler named Minato Kennedy, a fact that makes the whole situation weird because he only took the test about 3 times before. He had trouble believing it, so he asked the man if he could help him. At school, kids always gossip about the scary monster attack that hit the building yesterday morning. A young boy proudly boasted about an aura he felt so strong that his entire body went into a trance of paralysis. The girl asked her friend, "What do you think would happen if we learned that he was the one who killed the monster?" And nobody answered seriously at all. A story says the real hero isn't in a movie. They're actually a college freshman who got their name wrong. It felt like a dream had come true. A student was finally able to eliminate an S-rank creature on her own. Manhwa is leaning heavily against a tree that's shaking wildly right now. The crowd keeps whispering back and forth about that strange event from yesterday's morning rush. Just then, he shoved his hand in, saying, "Get out." The tough guy stares at the man who nearly knocked him down and says, "I don't think anyone would let a weakling fight that monster." When Minato stepped up to fight the monster that had haunted him, it was a moment of pure adrenaline and courage, but just as hard work to keep him alive afterward because the memories of the past were still screaming in his head. A voice laughed, saying he got very tired. Rikiro steps forward from his formal mask to speak directly to the boy, inviting him to stand tall as a reminder of his own greatness over the ancestors. The thought that sparks Minato's curiosity feels like a sudden wave of excitement in his mind. It's hard to say, but he often remembers what happened during those fights, so quick that it fuels his motivation. The swordsman asked the man to show a little bit of perseverance, but the crowd wondered exactly how he was doing. Rikiro pauses, staring at the man, standing there for a moment before suddenly realizing that someone else might be watching him now. It feels like modern transcendence is incredibly weak, no better than a common man walking down the street, where his sudden realization was that if a tall tower suddenly appeared, the entire world might crumble under its weight. Suddenly, he sensed a strange shift. There was someone with such a powerful aura that it could easily swallow all the rest of them at once. Even Manav notices his strange expression and asks if something's wrong with the man. He denies that immediately. The man lunged forward, his shout cutting through the quiet as the spirit vessel felt the sudden pressure of being pulled away by the crowd. He knows everyone has 3 chances at the exam, starting with the easy one and finishing with the tough one for ordinary civilians who want to be hunters. The guy keeps surprising him with a joke that he'll be testing him in the field next time. Students caught in the noise aren't sure if these words are band rules. The man who isn't fit for a race isn't actually running it. Instead, he's putting in every ounce of effort to set an all-time record at the 100-yard dash, where everyone knows the average time is 36 seconds and the top finisher scores 27. The older man told the kid he was a loser who gave up on his test, and that if there's any hope, it might be because he needs someone to save him from being alone in despair. He shoots the bullet, and Minato leaps free from the trap. Suddenly, he silenced everyone in a single blink of an eye as he broke the world's fastest time. The boy's final race was a half-mile sprint to get him through, and when he arrived, the clock read just 1 minute and 17 seconds. He actually exceeds his usual limits when he does those incredible 840 push-ups in only 2 minutes. The gym coach handed him a heavy barbell and said, he's got 120 pounds to bench press. His record shattered the past with a score that made everyone jump at the new high numbers. That question clouds the boy's mind as he watches a creature that feels far less like man than a wild beast, while Minato stumbles back wondering if his actions owe so much to those ancient guardians who still hold the key to everything. Rikiru asked himself a strange question after seeing them sit idle while the chaos unfolded around them. The principal's office was buzzing with a silent count as they gathered the scores for today's test. Midori's eyes widened as he looked at every single record in the box. He wasn't sure if this was a good news report or some bad one. The principal asked why she had demanded another test, confirming that his impressive skills were beyond all doubt. But here's the catch. Despite testing him 3 times and seeing that his power is completely invisible to anyone watching, the very fact that we're even looking at it means he still has no real energy left over. The man never expected any surprise when he met that person for the first time. The girl says to Midori that she thinks the transcendent theory might be off on Minato, and he just lets it pass without checking out. The bravest person tells her to stay here and watch the storm come. Spin that spinning fan for every last rotation before it goes off on a long timer, and your highest total gets you the top prize. Minato sat there thinking that no matter how hard he tried, nothing ever came his way for 3 straight years. And then he realized he couldn't even remember feeling that pain at all. Now she realizes how vital the blood flow really is, because without it, everything stops and breaks apart. As the black magic shoots up from your right ankle and spreads through every inch of your legs before you breathe again, it disappears completely back at that very spot. He quickly drew a pistol from his pocket and fired it, as if ready for battle. The little kid checks the monitor and says, "Okay, let's get started." Oh, a blinding wave of cool blue energy rushes out of Minato's chest and shoots straight for the air fan. He began to spin, showing everyone exactly how many times the wheel turned around him. The spinning spins faster, and the numbers are racing toward nothing while keeping going. The fan whirred loud enough that every number on the screen felt like a ghost waiting for its turn to go away. Everything ends in a fiery explosion after the device catches fire. The students were instantly shocked when they saw the fire start. You might spot him in his master's office after all. A strange gust of wind is pushing the clouds closer and threatening to hit them. The fan's blade came down and stuck right into the ceiling like a rock. The elderly gentleman was about to lose his last curl of hair as he walked through the quiet street. As Midori stood by the desk and saw his assistant jump in surprise, he patiently told the child that the situation was just one of those rare special cases where they had to work together. The man who taught history as a second student asks everyone else to admit that his knowledge of mana levels is actually incomprehensibly higher than anyone else's. The boy wasn't surprised. He was genuinely stunned as people in his neighborhood erupted in awe at a fellow hunter's brilliant performance on the test. He actually did. It was truly an incredible achievement. Minato stared at his trembling hand, instantly realizing he had completely lost control over the situation. Overcoming a strong feeling of awe made him feel completely overwhelmed by what happened to him. It was exactly what Rikiru had predicted. As that terrifying light took hold of him, Minato didn't know what came next. For all he knew, he was merely a boy with nothing but the shadow of the void to hide behind. Years passed until a stranger finally arrived at their doorstep. He's going to be the one who makes everyone's dreams come true. Suddenly, a strange sight caught the ship's eye as if its own eyes were watching it. A sudden burst of brilliant white light blinded him completely before he could even ask the hero if something had exploded, but that moment explained why he felt a massive, terrifying wave of force in his arm on the way home. A warm smile takes center stage as Midori steps forward in the moment. The moment that exact thought hits him made his face drop so low he barely could see his own reflection, wondering if the one thing truly strong out of this world might actually be someone else entirely. The blonde man whispered into the microphone that he had witnessed the contestants' impressive show before telling Minig to pass. You gotta catch that cheat code before anyone else can see your name. Midori, 23, turned into a legendary huntress only 9 years ago and is currently walking through the woods like an unstoppable force of nature. He almost wiped away 1,000,000 monsters with one powerful hit and crushed the chaos that haunted Kyushu for over 10 years, while also stopping the deadly panic from 5 years ago. His phone buzzed with a frantic call from a stranger who didn't know he was in his own room, causing him to jump and look around until someone else called out, "Hey," which made him freeze completely. Raikira grins wickedly and demands the man give up his body for a fight. Master Dedori told everyone that the only real rule for this match was hitting back at him so fast that he could be hit right away. He won't face any trouble unless he gets caught attacking at 10-second intervals. The strongest person who walked in said, "Don't worry because I'll be gentle. He won't let me do anything with my powers, but I'll let the guy with the shiny sword get what he wants." The blonde man even picked up some tools for him to pick from himself. The former loser stared at the table with a mix of awe and suspicion, scratching his head as he wondered why everyone had gathered for such an interesting surprise. He's staring at that bonus exam with a wild grin, wondering if he'll finally beat the guy in charge for an entire minute of glory. The little boy was standing near the wall of steel and asked the tough warrior, "Is this actually fine?" The fierce man nodded slowly, saying, "Yes, but I know my strength." The strongest god, who feels like a demon trying to save everyone, told the hero that no matter how strong his sword is, it can't stop the man from fighting back. Rikiro felt like he was about to fly off a cliff of pure joy, only to stop and see that not every battle was easy for anyone who wasn't weak. So Minato saw the true strength behind his foe and decided to go out there to prove himself even when they were all fighting with might. It really feels like Midori won't let him beat her. The boy felt so overwhelmed by everything he was thinking that he couldn't keep it all in his head anymore. So if you're stuck in this situation, just figure out a way to get through it. The students were dangling outside with eyes wide open as the duel began, while the swordmaster yelled, "Give it to me!" Regardless of which option you choose, Midori's phone lights up and tells him exactly when the fight begins. Manhwa picked up a sword that looked exactly like the one she had been given. He's sprinting toward the next punch, fully prepared for impact. It feels like Rikiro is in a panic because he thinks the kid is being punished for nothing at all. He decided today would be his chance to prove something truly brave by facing the world head-on, knowing he'd risk everything just so someone could finally see him as the legend he was supposed to become. Even though he spent hours working, he still couldn't make eye contact with the player. Midori asked if the boy is still using Instagram to share his latest video fight footage when they were about to go live on YouTube. As the rest of the group stared in awe at the blonde man who kept his eyes closed while checking his phone, he didn't even notice the silence. Minato threw everything he had to smash the ball as hard as possible. The most powerful battle seems so easy when you think of kids playing with fireballs. The ancient blade hummed with raw mana, and while the protagonist stayed strong, another student was genuinely fascinated by Minato's power. The boy keeps his pace steady even though nothing seems wrong in the world around him. He keeps desperately trying for that chance, swinging his arms and legs in every possible way to catch the ball. Minato looked stunned as he saw his own muscles unspooling perfectly from his back without any fatigue, just because he wanted them to move. He doesn't know why that change happened, but he knows for certain something new is starting inside him. The sudden nudge at the top of his head woke him up from a long day of quiet thinking and made him look around in surprise. Finally, 10 seconds had ticked by, and a mighty explosion was hurled out. Minato managed to dodge the storm before it could even start. He is so scared that his whole heart stops beating because he knows exactly what's coming next. As time winds down, he turns his gaze toward what remains of that building and watches the chaos settle into quiet stillness around him. Minato is shocked by the thought of how much he's allowed to hide when Midori actually holds him back. If he hadn't waited so long, his vision would have turned into nothing more than a pitiful smile. Midori felt a strange unease as if he had suddenly forgotten how to hold back his own magic. Yet he knew he still had the ability to keep it in check. Even though the fight seems intense, he never felt anything like a real danger coming from his foe. And suddenly, the vessel of the heroes knew exactly where to go. They had to stop and fight back before things went wrong. He wanted to recall the incredible power he once held. Oh, now that boy feels a bit more ready than before. Midori sees a big shift as Minato launches his next blow. The crowd standing around the arena felt a shockwave of disbelief as every move that used to take minutes now happened in seconds. The screen tried to grab their faces but was too slow for them to see. It turns out Midoriya isn't just seeing a better opponent. He's also realizing Minato might be trying to boost his own speed by pretending he's faster, which makes him wonder if that trick could actually trigger something dangerous about his abilities. He turns his attention back to the phone and starts ticking down the time, as if running a marathon. The blonde looks at the clock and sees that 411 seconds are still hanging over the match, so she decides to stay calm and very gentle throughout the whole thing. He tosses Minato Square's hand to his side, while striking forward hard, sending the boy flying backward through the air before he hits something solid behind him. The little boy decided he was too strong for the water and finally let himself go. He couldn't believe he was facing the world's toughest person right now. They were actually punching a super powerful guy with nothing but a straight blow to his chest. This was such a wild turn of events. Even though the sun is brightened and his hair is finally a nice shade of brown, he knows that Midori is still too hard to pass and needs more time before tomorrow's exam. He keeps fighting hard until the end, and then Midori simply doesn't notice him at all. He paused, looking completely confused as the blonde boy did something surprising. Midori steps forward and whispers, "I've really seen too much now, and I only have 30 seconds before the time runs out." A single thunderous hit slammed Minato down, ending his life instantly with nothing left to save. Midori knew the boy was gifted and had no chance of matching his brilliance when he faced that terrible R-Squad beast. The blonde calls out to them, saying they can all go home, but he tells you sadly that his rival had no chance of catching up to him. Hearing the news, Minato immediately grabbed his blade and drew it sharp. Midori never tried to talk to him, so he didn't care. He stands now, bathed in the very same glow of that fire. Rikiro held onto the stubborn boy who was drifting to sleep, and with a sudden burst of strength from taking full advantage of him, he finally regained total control over his own limbs. A fierce warrior raises a blade and shouts to the towering figure standing at the very top of the universe. Midori was absolutely shocked when she realized that the change had already happened. The long-haired man in control leans back and asks, "Are you ready for some real fun?" Minato gets ready to take a turn watching another person fight with all their might. You found your perfect, powerful friend when everything else fell apart. It took only a split second after that sudden surge to push him back from overstepping, leaving him gasping for air and feeling utterly powerless again. Midori questioned whether his rival could somehow turn into a different creature or possess that power at all. Yet the answer was clear. Despite the confusion, the ground beneath him felt like an overwhelming beast. Rikira shouted sharply, cutting off the conversation before he could finish his sentence about avoiding distractions. "Oh wow." The girl noticed immediately that her moves are now totally unpredictable. She can move faster, stronger, or throw a weapon differently than ever before. The razor-edge blade was inches away, but the man saw a gap and ran out of the room before the metal could even touch him. As Midori began moving her arms with extra force that felt both heavy and strange, the air in the room suddenly grew thick with tension. Minato stops what he was doing and stares intensely at the boy. The kid suddenly charges forward, eyes flashing with rage, ready to take out any threat in front of him. The fiery energy shooting across the battlefield burned through glass, knocking people out of their seats. The blonde finally feels her sword's power isn't hiding behind caution anymore. Instead, she is carrying the true strength of a seasoned warrior ready to face whatever comes next. It feels like nature itself flows around you, smooth and gentle, while another giant wave pushes against the whole world at once to lift it all up. The boy finally figured out why the S-rank monster vanished so easily in that one moment. Midori watches the clock tick down, counting 39 seconds before he finally gets his chance to strike hard. Rikiro stays perfectly still and checks his reflection in the mirror before realizing how high the giant floating above him must be. He laughs loudly while seeing that this towering figure is just a few feet off his head. Meanwhile, everyone else was stunned to see Minato make a hard move and push his foe back into a solid defensive position. He felt bored as Rikiro told everyone to abandon all their rules so his rival could chase him down with everything, promising that if the blonde stayed calm, he would make her regret it all along. As the mighty progenitor charges down with a sword drawn to full power, his brother Midori holds his ground, perfectly poised and ready for any challenge that will follow. The invisible hand launches a stray projectile toward a cluster of guns, sending everything floating out into the sky before hitting the ground right next to them. The swordsman looked up, seeing exactly what was going on around him. Midori stands alone in a sea of thrown weapons during the most violent storm imaginable. The blonde was swinging at the air with a weapon, but he wasn't fighting anyone, just Reiro, the madman who wanted it all in. Two things crash into one another like a blur, so faint it's hard to follow. Yet the audience finds it all incredibly fascinating. You know, when the sky turns gray and the wind whistles loudly above them, we are definitely going to see the most epic showdown in our history. As Ryuro stays completely alert while his younger brother follows closely behind, everyone else envies having to stay near him instead of the tall, unruly one. Minaba felt powerless against the powerful swordsmen who were about to strike her down. The old man noticed what was happening and decided to stay put instead of trying to help. So, if anyone else came along, he'd be right up against them. The moment the mage appears on screen to see the Monadu fighting, he sees nothing but a confused audience staring at him. Rikiro swings those sharp, diagonal slashes that cut through the air with perfect precision before tackling his opponent. His hand trembles as he moves through the room, a quiet struggle that leaves him looking shaken and unsure where to go next. He watches a stranger learn to lift his body high into the air, then follows with a powerful uppercut to slam the punch down while he shifts his weight to the front of him. The entire sword exploded into thousands of tiny shards as it shattered further. The brave swordsman cuts through a threat and stops his own blade from shattering, while Midori watches in awe that victory feels like magic. The announcer shouts, "Only 10 seconds left," and watches the boy prepare to act. Suddenly, Raiki bursts into the arena with a wild excitement in his chest. The crowd sits stunned, staring at the man as he begins his plan with nothing but confusion in his eyes. Minato was chased by a bully who took his prized sword away from him when they first met. The fight didn't pause. It erupted before anyone got back in line. He feels charged straight up. The attack caused a lot of trouble for the school building itself. No one can hurt Raikiro anymore because he's still holding the key to the room. They jumped back and forth like ghosts in the sky before landing safely. Though the class was happily smashing together, everyone worried that something terrible could happen if they kept doing it for too long. Midori's eyes darted toward the shattered metal blade, caught in a moment of sudden panic and instinctive movement. She snatched the spinning propeller out of the twisted metal and spun it free before she could stop it. The power inside him cracks a small piece of his own body. A deadly threat appears from the sky as a swordswoman watches her weapon glide through the atmosphere with terrifying precision before she suddenly snaps into action. It looks like the best thing that's about to happen is yet to be written. The Kanoi-style sword move isn't magic. It's a simple flip of your wrist that cuts through the air with ease. A powerful bolt of lightning strikes a spinning fan blade across and around, creating thousands of sharp, invisible shards that dance wildly as they fly outward from the center. Midori bursts into laughter, and he declares that this moment was truly the best of all time. The sword Raichiro swung once and broke in a loud clatter. The blonde takes his place next to everyone else. It is exactly 60 seconds left before he can smash into Minato's body. The gods know he holds a strength far too great for any ordinary soul to feel in his own body. Minato pulls his blade close as if to strike someone who won't stop him. He grabs the momentum, letting him regain complete control over his own body. He pulls out his gun and stares at the floating figure of Midori, who has already stepped into battle. Those heavy palms strike together at exactly the right instant, sending a mighty blast straight toward their center. Both Midori and Raikiro were stunned when the strange thing happened to them. A little boy's hand has been cracked open in the dark, leaving a gaping wound that he can't even see. Even though he has already planned his next move and needs to figure out how his opponent might stop the attack, the tension never really breaks yet. Finally, after all that effort, he hits the most powerful god in the sky with a mighty thunderclap. Dueling between the two supreme masters was always a very rare sight in this world. The battle rages with endless clashes of attack and defense as the two heroes hunt down the truth. It's truly like an epic showdown where every move feels like a grandmaster duel, leaving only watching eyes to marvel at the sheer brilliance of their play. Rikiro smiled, knowing the boy wasn't doing anything more daring than trying a new trick that no one else could figure out yet. He finally unlocked a completely fresh route and made the move without a single hit needed. He waited with nervous hope that only one lucky hit would finally bring him home. But things didn't go exactly as he thought. He held out those tiny fingers right up to the opponent's skin, ready to strike before they could move. He didn't get a single punch when he swung that hard enough. Midori had a brilliant plan in mind, but the absolute mightiest man on earth made an impossible choice by touching her face instead of doing anything else. He smiled so hard that the entire town of Minato heard him saying he had passed. A giant tower stands tall and silent under a sky that's full of confusion, but everyone knows the truth. This isn't a normal place for people to be. The crowd stares nervously while someone reveals whose hand actually holds the ball and who wins. Midori shouts loudly to help his assistant fix the problem. The blonde girl asked Rin where they were heading, but he told her the boy had already passed, so now she just needs to heal his broken arm. The students were so stunned when they heard Minato finally cleared the exam. He finally landed his big hit at Midori, and everyone cheered up. While the helper keeps pushing against her to stop her, she's just finishing up fixing the boy's broken hand. Rin beams with a gentle smile and cheers that he's finally passed the checkpoint. He laughed easily, thanking her for both the hug and the soft words as she sat up in alarm to figure out why everything was so wrong. Midori shook his head in disbelief as he asked, "Did I ever forget?" before realizing the answer was a cruel twist of fate. He said that perhaps they got some extra points for the game, though in any case, the boy still managed to get past. A blonde hero cheered wildly as they caught a matchup between Minato and Rikiro. But Minato knew exactly where this clash had been going wrong. What truly shocked Midori was how effortlessly the boy kept dodging his last attack. That was a really impressive move for him, so he told the boy to feel proud of his own hard work. He was so impressed by those words that he thanked his host with a big smile. Minato has a secret matter of fact he wants to share, so he asks if you have any items for passing the exam. Rin lets out a long breath and watches the blonde wait patiently before he gives his answer. Midori is completely surprised as he sees himself planned out for him. Minato waited silently in the dark room until the very last moment before he could hear what came next. The darkness swelled over the shattered room as they watched it fade away until only a faint glow remained behind them. Minato's mom is busy cooking dinner while she wonders exactly who is going to join her family for their meal. He stood nervously before her and said, "I'm not entirely sure about this, but I promise someone else will be there." Regardless of the twist, she thought today was perfect because he had passed his test and been spotted by a legendary figure. She's so thrilled about the feast. She said that everyone had always known the man could do amazing things only when he took full responsibility for them. Feeling a little nervous about hosting someone so famous, she told herself her living room would be exactly like a doghouse, even though the boy refused to believe that idea at all. Finally, after he wiped his hands clean and sat down on the bed to sleep, he thought back to the exact moment Rin threw his card right at Midori, so she wouldn't know what was coming next. The blonde tries to calm down by saying Mato had said they'd be a team before, but he refuses to admit it. No matter how painful the moment gets, the great figure still keeps his smile because he knows a lot of curious people are watching him right now. Does he want to go home and talk about those details all night? He looks at the choices his friends have made about who they actually want to fight. The final item that Minato's mind is still holding in tension. Even though their ancestors burned away the old fortress years back, the bad guys still keep coming out of those hidden portals to hunt them down. He looked down at the floor and wondered aloud, is it really all of them? He heard a voice calling his name over and over again, finally causing his heart to stop beating in sudden panic. Rikiro was the one who called him. The other people are also here, and it worries a little bit that someone might be asking about something being wrong. Minato stirs awake and immediately demands to know why the swordsman just said he had completed that important conversation, causing him to jump from his chair and ask whether those words meant they were actually choosing which person would attend to his fate. The conversation was all about that nervous feeling in his chest as he waited for a key moment before standing up and telling everyone that Midori had already arrived. When he walks down the hall, darkness quickly settles over everything and everyone is quiet. A sudden sound stops him in his tracks as he looks up. He yells at his mom, who's right on her back on the floor. Minato dove down quickly, feeling sure someone was watching while the old boy shouted back. He squinted carefully as if a tiny hint was peeking through the darkness. You can see the person reaching out to grab a piece of food from the tray before they even put it into their own mouth. It's a mess of trash and terrible taste. He shares the news with Minato that he wants to show her how to cook better meat for everyone. A little boy asked his mom how she did things, but an intruder said to look around and don't talk about her. Goro Annie, the S-Ring hunter ready to go, was handed a key and told to say hello to Midori. He was telling the boy to rush home and get ready so they could head straight to HQ. But right then, Minato was locked into thinking about stabbing the man. The man hit him hard and left his friend in a panic. Goro burst into laughter with an evil grin on his face. The boy looks up from his book and asks the man, "Do you really want him to fight?" Minato stares into the chaos of the kitchen and thinks instantly that his mom is there. She remembered the day he dropped off his dad while she was taking care of him. Then when he asked for new sneakers, she confirmed it with a quick smile because she knew the trouble would be over soon. His mom said she'd make delicious tonatsu for dinner so he could have a great morning. Minato keeps asking, but he never knows what happened to her at all. Meanwhile, everyone else watches the show while Raichiro plays his copy of the movie with a grin. Minato doesn't care about the fight, so they need to figure out exactly how to use him now. Goro smiled at the boy with a warm, genuine expression that made him look even more cute. The boy steps up to take the man down in a single motion, yet instead of moving, he freezes just as the air seems to hold its breath. The old man stood by the fire and watched a fierce battle take place nearby. Even though he's old, he still knows some clever tricks. Goro was thrown out by accident, and the silence that followed is just a little too loud for me now. Oh, Minato leaps forward and tackles the man right in front of him like a hero ready for action. The man looked surprised, thinking maybe he had seen a strange move from his old school. Seeing the video of the fight, he realized the boy possessed a really strong aura and amazing sword skills. Kai must finally admit that a child who can beat even top-tier hunters is far tougher than anyone else. Minato stood up with a scowl, demanding the answer to his question in a loud and impatient voice. The boy is trying to figure out exactly what happened to his mom, and when she shows up, it seems like she might have a rare disorder, though Goro just notes that even if he knows nothing, someone else probably did. He choked the girl into a coma by poisoning her so she couldn't get out of his grip. The man said the woman could be quite sensitive when she gets better, but Minato just didn't get it all. Shock, the lanky man asks what he means. Ahem? All right. The little guy questions why he'd hurt a friend who was supposed to be his buddy and is now gone forever. Goro giggled like he was hearing a hilarious joke, calling the man an idiot when the boy managed to dodge right as the man tried to hit him. He refused to be his own kind, claiming to be a humble, dutiful puppet who obeys every command regardless of whether he's in charge or not. But to force even a frightened listener to respect someone else, the villain simply kidnapped an important person and used them as leverage for everything the man said. Minato keeps dodging the attacks, and then in the center of the battle, he's accidentally stepped into his own foot. Goro suddenly sees a chance to make yet another move in this intense match. Suddenly, the boy froze as the man pulled back, creating space between them so they could each feel the burning heat of their own face. As a deep purple stain began to creep up his face, the world seemed to hold its breath. The lanky man stares down as he sees two blades sticking out of his hand and a dark fluid glistening on his fingertips. It's now his moment to savor the deadly brew that is ready to spill from him. You've heard the story that a superhero's soul could be made from anything. He'd rather have the city burn down than let his friends be trapped by deadly gas. So he refuses to flood even 5 kilometers wide in an urban crowd. Minato will die within an hour, but the antidote won't work unless he joins the guild. It's not a matter of whether anyone exists at all. For him, the only thing that matters is how much he thinks about those invisible substances. He asked his friend, a wise old man named Warrentine, to see if he could be found inside him now that years have passed and the liquid has spread everywhere. The young boy tries to apologize to the woman after a difficult moment, wondering if she would feel better if someone could give him his antidote quickly. As he talks, Goro asks where he is going and whether it is because he fears death that makes him hallucinating. Minato asked himself about that powerful move he did only a moment ago. Makoto said something like a polite bow for his friend, because he knew how much God had put into his life to make him work so hard every day. The old man saw something familiar, and then he figured out exactly how the young boy had learned to do it from the single time they both looked at it together. And then you're faced with the terrible weight of a horde coming from Raikiro Hananoi and the deadly weapon of a blue spear from Kushima. It's a guy named Mulgif who holds up so many ropes that he looks like an army. He'd memorized every story from his ancestors, turning those ancient tales into his own life's greatest wish. Now that the memories are all locked in, he opens up a secret door to reveal exactly where these stories truly belong. Goro finds himself caught in a sudden guard, unsure if he needs to explain it further. Minato said that, in other words, there was absolutely no need for anyone to fear him. Oh, that stings the guy who's got a pretty long neck. He told the boy that if fear stops, he'd get hurt. Then he promised a new poison would force the boy to cry out for his own suffering to stop. As his liquid poured out, it swept through the air and took down all those living leaves right here in front of him. Gore tells her he might still survive the battle and retrieve that dangerous drug, even if the trauma from the pain breaks him down too much to feel anything but raw fear afterward. He stands in a dangerous corner, completely helpless, yet his eyes never waver as if something terrible is coming for him. A sudden flash of light blares around his body as Takwon swings a legendary fist, slamming it squarely into the man's chest and sending his own blood to his mouth. Goro jumps back in awe when he sees the hero watching the clash, though Minato still has no idea what to do about him, and this is the first time Irson's technique appears on screen. He was thrown backward and crushed under a pile of hot asphalt, tearing the pavement apart in agony. Minato keeps pushing forward until he hits the wall and can't move anymore. In a desperate last-ditch, Gore tries to poison the boy, but he simply cuts off his own blades and then delivers Rowan's dragon claw, stunning the strange pink progenitor before he grabs the victim. A new trick from the character Lilac. He jumps off his chair and flies up like a spinning top. Goro stared blankly at the sudden noise and didn't even realize what had just gone wrong. He thought about how a poisoned attack could instantly turn a victim into a frightened, confused wreck who can't even move because their nervous system is broken forever. So he asked himself, where did this escape go? It's now your turn as the great mage who keeps secrets hidden. A bright beam of gold lightning shoots from Minato's fingertip as he summons Mstias Sentius, causing the charge to grow even bigger before hitting its final target. The ancient people watched over the world with awe, completely stunned. Suddenly, Riker asked them, "Did you actually see it?" The day came when everyone vanished from Technomera after eliminating them, but those who remained carried a secret power so strong they could copy it all along, physically and magically, and wondered why they aren't just the ones with the mark of the void. That moment where a swordsman discovers something truly thrilling must have been absolutely fascinating. The kids have to work hard every day to give their grandparents a better life, after all. If they work together and teach him everything, Minad could become the greatest transcendent that has ever been. The boys sprinted back and forth between the tall buildings, chasing each other with a loud burst of energy. The group knows exactly who's coming because 15 other guilds are rushing in to pick up a boy named Midori Ikara. They're desperate not to miss their chance. So suddenly a blonde steps forward and points out that there are more than just one among the crowd. The mighty, almost immortal figure smiled so hard that he asked himself, really, how old it gets to be 15. So he says everyone is now dead? Manori threw a high-flying blast straight at the guy, and he was completely taken by surprise. A mighty shot sends a powerful opponent directly down onto the ground. He's talking to Run when his voice cuts through the quiet of the room. She checks the room and says, "I'm here at the station and I don't feel anything strange, but my eyes are on something new." It turns out Goro Hitani is a master of traps, so dangerous that even the best guards can't stop him from beating up people at his place in Monado. He lies flat on the dirt because looking at him makes him not want to be there. Midori giggled as he heard the news. He laughed, knowing the boy possessed a rare gift, yet remained shocked by defeating someone with that title. The blonde looks at the boy and says, "Are you hurt?" But the boy just laughs and says, "No, I'm all right." His mom is curled up on the couch while she's asleep. Minato said she was still okay, and nobody could tell her why it wasn't better. Rikiro laughed as he heard all this, knowing that without Warren's protection, they had already drifted deep into the dark depths of the underworld. She gasped as she realized she had been holding on her only 5-second escape from the poison. Yet the woman who claimed to have pulled some of Goro's serum still stood there in the same breathless state. Midori looks down at his hand as he realizes how late everyone has waited to see him win, even though the fight was still going strong behind him. Minato asks Goro if he's been lying about partnering with the blonde, but the blonde replies that they're all using that trick to play tricks on people. The strongest person who knows what he is asking turns around and says yes. Rin puts back the broken walls and fences, shouting with excitement as he signals everyone to gather where they belong for a proper talk next week. Midori sighed and looked around the room, her voice dropping an octave as she said, "We absolutely need to talk about Minato's future." The sun rises over the empty room as a little boy steps out of bed, wondering if his mother has finally checked in on him after all these weeks. The evening after midnight called, Midori looked at Manano, smiled warmly, and told him there was incredible talent waiting behind those eyes. The excitement that sparked in his son's heart is what Midori Ikara had seen coming when she announced her discovery of him. It was like a sudden, powerful splash of red eyes in the dark room, and suddenly he knew his mother was crying for him too. When she left, the woman had already loaded his bag with a box of cereal and toast on a plastic tray, making sure he didn't even have anything to take home. Minato looked very sad as she wondered if her son could really handle all those dangerous things around him. Midori stepped forward and said, "I'm being completely honest now." She told him she had always admired those ancient legends, which made hunting her supermotive. She felt so deeply honored that she was now worried about her baby's safety. Midori whispers that the position feels like a dark storm where nothing can be predicted, even though she knows how to survive every single one of them. He assures her that he'll raise Minato into a mighty warrior, just like the heroes he idolizes. The mother's eyes filled with a storm of deep emotion as she watched her child run away from the scary bear that was hiding in the tree. She was so glad to hear his hard work helping her little boy. In the car, Rin asks if he's sure he can keep that promise. After all, no one can predict the future through the rearview mirror, where he watches how his mother advises Minato not to sleep on a full stomach and how they separate colored clothes when washing. With that, Midori says he'll keep his word as best as he can. So either way, it's time to go. She looked at her own heart like a precious stone and asked her mom to look after herself. Then, as her son leaves home, the mother steps forward and whispers come home for the new year, while wiping away tears with a look of longing. Finally, Monadu launches into a fresh chapter as his destiny begins anew. But then Midori asked, "Are you actually prepared for that?" The boy smiled back with a quiet certainty as he looked at him. His father's crew said, "But wait, look again at your mother and see what happens." The blonde tells him he'll be ready when the road gets pretty long, so she lets him relax whether he wants to eat or fall asleep along the way. Minato stared at the bag in his hand. The door swings open, and the air inside smells like fresh food. His packed lunch is right here. He steps into a large box full of delicious food and starts eating slowly. His glowing eyes crackle with deep emotion as the moment hits him like a powerful spark. His favorite meal was so delicious. On top of all that, his mom wrote him a letter saying good luck for the day. He felt tears in his eyes as he thanked her for all the love she brought into their lives and made them feel like home again. As he sipped his meal, the little boy cried with delight because it tasted so yummy. Ren acts like a very serious guy, while Midori takes her time to rest in the car, meaning both enjoy the ride together. The mountain air feels incredibly bright and warm today. Manhwa stands by his window and looks out, asking himself where he's going. He held out his hand with a genuine smile, and Midori welcomed him warmly. A very rare way for some unordinary people to live in our world. He's welcomed back into his new home with a big grin on his face. Minato's eyes widen as he stares at the sign and sees a name that makes his heart race. From the window, someone watched them from afar. A man steps forward and shouts, "Oh my, the new arrival has finally arrived." It's a brand new friend stepping into their group for the first time. The woman holding a steaming cup of tea says, "Are we going to get a new team?" It sounds like a really exciting feeling when you see fresh blood. The redhead stared at her hands as she wondered if anyone would actually be brave enough to make a deal with that person, knowing only time could finally decide whether they were meant to stay in the fight or fall from grace. Minato found himself challenged by a curious boy who wanted to learn more about his new world. Yet when the little guy felt stuck with so many confusing questions, he realized he didn't really understand what was coming next and chose to join instead. They could not talk to her because it was classified as a state secret. Midori insisted he place his items inside the dormitory, while the assistant also offered to transport them. Yet Minato simply refused to let it happen. A boy suddenly pops into the air and offers his hand to help him find the way home. Minato wonders why his boss, who looks so powerful, suddenly gets punched straight into a hit. The boy who was so fierce a moment ago suddenly lets go of his grip to land softly on the earth, looking like he has already conquered the world in one giant step. Hikitaro Hanada steps forward and proudly reveals he's a member of the CPU, ready to show everyone what he knows about the future. Midori watches as a woman serves tea for everyone to enjoy the battle. Minato asks why he thinks he and his friends are really tied together. He laughs with joy as Hikotra tackles the dark-haired boy, who stays fixed in place while she keeps firing her attacks. Minato was still feeling the shock after Minato kicked him hard, even though he blocked the impact. A blonde girl wonders why her friend thinks she's the only one who knows how a special army got started, but she also wonders how her friend can be fighting right now while chatting all along. Hipotro wants to know whose name he's got in the room. Minato stepped forward and introduced himself, while Midori took a slow sip of her tea. He remembered first the boy passing the hunting exam, then the bonus test. So after that test with the S-rank hunter, he's finally getting his chance to be tested right in front of everyone at HQ. The boy looked exactly like one expected to die from a test, so Rin insisted there is no cure. As she reminded Midori about his past, the woman felt betrayed by that exact moment of birth. In a chaotic moment during the fight, Hikotra asks who does the killing, but Manhwa says they have to find out how to get rid of creatures that break through the rifts. The right choice lets her blonde shine with a genuine sparkle. He adds up, saying they're certainly quite good at getting rid of pests. The next question is about other calamities that really confuse the progenitor vessel, because the blonde kid keeps telling us that sometimes terrible things happen so bad it's like a total pandemonium, or even worse, the Kyushu outbreak 5 years ago. Surprise! Minad said he thought those were caused by major dimensional rifts. You can't just see the loss. You have to feel how deep a single tear hides that quiet, terrible truth inside your soul. Hikitaro didn't even forget they were still fighting. It sounds like a common thing people tell their kids about. They say it's what's taught by the teachers and what everyone else believes. That leaves a huge gap in this picture, so keep reading for more. Before telling the secrets, he fires his weapon and sends a new threat flying. The world feels jarringly uneven right now, while every object seems to be tumbling under a sudden, heavy hit of force. The tree the other boy was hiding from has been smashed into pieces by a powerful kick. The situation wasn't an invasion. It was a strange arrival from another world that felt completely real to us. There was a terrifying crisis, so severe and dangerous it nearly equaled that ancient monster tower standing 3 centuries earlier. Minato gasped for air and saw a horrifying sight as those monsters tried once more to invade, leaving him utterly stunned by their stubborn refusal to retreat. A stranger from another world stares down every single one of them, waiting for the perfect chance to turn on his weapon and hit home. It turns out that being born far from the sky is actually harder than having the power of a mighty ancestor. So it makes sense they came back to us just for this reason. The brave ones who know how to watch out for disasters try as hard as they can to stop all these bad things coming. But even if they do their best, the little group of elite fighters still takes a big risk because they're so smart and powerful that they keep them from happening. Midori beams with pride as they watch her partners share a warm moment. Minad kept staring at the screen and said, "The computer is actually a secret army that fights against those strange dreams." Hikadara stood up and said, "I'm sure not any of the other guys could hold back so many kicking motions like this." He beams with such a happy smile and happily says that meeting him was just wonderful. Midori found himself waiting for the moment when everyone stopped talking and watched the scene unfold with great care. Suddenly, a young boy who keeps stomping out began to shout, "Oh, everyone, I'm done with the test." The kids cheered as he announced that the dark-haired kid had cleared everything and got free. They kept watching from the shadows all day long as they walked through the crowd. Hikotaro steps up to the screen and whispers, "This is another transcendent signal coming from the processor." As the others look on, he adds, "And Minato is definitely one of those strange beings now." The clouds swirl away, so fast Midori has to wonder if she'll ever see them again. Then the kicking boy said, "Maybe we need to test the progenitor's own ship." He decided to walk around with his luggage and make sure everyone saw the journey through the dormitory. The first sign of evening comes only when the stars begin to twinkle and the wind carries a soft, melodic sigh before the sun finally dips below the horizon. Minato's quiet private room sits empty and waiting for him. The world hangs in a cloud of warnings, so when something big threatens everyone at once, his brain instantly runs on high alert because he knows the computer must stand by to stop it from happening. He stares at the towering nightmare that demands every ancestor's help to crush, wondering if today is another day when monsters like him are about to tear itself apart. Suddenly, he realized his fear was rising as soon as the mysterious figure named Raikira appeared and offered him advice to keep training hard. He completely shocked the whole class by catching the boy completely off guard. And then a swordman walks in. It's not just one hero. They're all there to help him fight. A young man stands in a crowded room and says quietly, "I wasn't given time before, so I want to tell you what everyone has decided. They decide Minato will be the ultimate god after all his potential, so they send Minad Kanagi to learn from their ancestors." The boy's face goes stiff as he stares at a wall of silence, completely unable to move his hands. The hero stares at his disciples with wide eyes and whispers, "Asterisk, do you truly want me to become your master?" Asterisk, he couldn't stop trying to figure out why the universe wanted him replaced with someone else after thinking everything they needed was just taking control of his life. Rikiro says he wouldn't care if the group had to battle over this secret, though Minato insists everyone must respect his opinion, so no one fights for it. The Sword Master finally admitted the plan was a secret betrayal, yet watching him fight turned the whole team around. They discovered a much wiser strategy than relying on their own strength, so everyone felt very pleased with the new arrangement. They decided that training the man might actually make things more fun. Ryuro asked if he remembered the poison user he defeated, even though he had only seen some of his once unique techniques. The boy managed to copy them perfectly, though the techniques were nowhere near as precise as when the progenitors used them. At the very least, he won the fight. The giant swordsman Raichiro asked himself with a puzzled look, wondering if such an incredible feat truly stood the test of time. The young swordsman stares at a blank sheet of paper while whispering about the void's mark. Yet he knows deep down that his true weapon isn't just a blade, it's his ability to hold on to other people's powers without fear. He feels so confident now that he thinks he can defeat them all instantly. Minato's heart sank when Rikiro mentioned the exams and felt tears well up in his eyes as he remembered all those hard studies. Those who heard him saying he was hopeless often laughed at him, wondering exactly what he was trying to do before anyone could believe him. He's known as the man who could never make a difference because many people call him a loser. Minato knew he was completely alone when nobody else got the Hunter exam 3 consecutive times. He stood in a row of people staring at his back, wondering why they weren't letting him take the easy path. That day, as news broke about his identity, the crowd simply smiled because they knew exactly what happened next. No matter how hard Casey tried to pull out the truth about who he was, that name never slipped his mind at all. He never even thought about having a future. Yet when Minato met them and Midori spoke to his mother about his greatness, the world suddenly changed forever. Raikiro admitted that he could somehow become the ultimate person who stands above every other being in existence. Because of all the things that have happened to him, he is wondering if he really deserves what's right now. Minato cries and wonders why anyone would let him be happier than usual. He's been looking up at those people for decades long and never thought he'd ever see them again. The old gods are standing right here, and their voices whisper that they truly believe in this new hero. Rairo smiled gently because he felt unsure about what to do next. Then the old man asked the little boy, "Why are you crying?" They breathe life out of his body, particularly when Minato sleeps so completely that he becomes even more free than he used to be. The swordsman warned the boy that his grand plan was already here, promising to send him home exactly 10 hours after every single hour of training every single day. The day turns into an adventure when the little boy steps up to help the computer fight down the magic spells that are coming out of prophecy. During the night, his dreams will change completely as the progender trains him to sleep peacefully with him. It's going to be a long day after he gets off the train. It seems Raikiro has already decided he is prepared for the moment. The boy looked back at those words he had whispered so long ago. He still held onto those weeping eyes as he nodded in agreement. It was a huge honor for him to meet those incredible people. Oh, the night's quiet ending brings us right into the bright dawn. Kiko's ears are twitching as he tries to catch a few hints of the world's music humming right beside him. The footsteps in the hallway start to sound like thunder as soon as they are heard. He smiled and turned to greet the person with great enthusiasm. Minato greeted the young boy with a bright smile, but as his eyes drifted toward the dim light of his room, he instantly felt deeply exhausted before he even realized what had happened. The ship says its story starts with him still figuring things out, and the blonde jokes it'll be the same. Hiko feels that something else has started to happen in the room. It feels like a soft glow of something invisible surrounds the little boy right now. And then he looked at himself with wide, amazed eyes. The blonde tried another kick, but Minato simply dodged it and spit back. A tired man with a mischievous grin looks down toward the hallway and says, "Let me get some time before you wake up." Hiko lost his mind trying to solve a puzzle that had never existed before. He kept running with his feet so high that someone in the crowd thought he might be flying. Everyone gathers for breakfast inside the CPU's big kitchen. Together with Minato, the blonde kid is delighted to witness a spot that is now free, while someone else has already been seated at the table. The shy boy asked gently, "Would you mind if we joined you?" They kept talking while she ate, so Hiko finally sat down and told the boy beside them to follow suit. Minato thinks back to the moment when he saw that kicking boy and realized she was among them. And then she finally spoke up, shouting that they had to make him a newcomer, which made her look very unhappy about seeing him again. The old guy stood tall above her, but when he finally spoke up, she didn't even look at him. She simply said she didn't care about his name at all. She pointed a fork at him and threatened, saying that if he ever showed up to prove herself, she would definitely use his name next time. It's time to start training soon, so the prophecy gets more important as well. And she says Minato will take part in it too. It happened in 1945 when a giant discovery brought a prophecy book to Antarctica. It had been hidden safely beneath 3 kilometers of snow and ice. A man helped pull the heavy book out of its shelf. The title was written in a crooked, almost childlike script with descriptions of calamities that would destroy the world within 8 decades. But now he asks himself, do they really believe in those prophecies? Manet apologizes for shifting the topic quickly, yet he still doesn't know her name. The girl insists it doesn't matter and urges him to just answer. She tells him not to be a fool because those hidden promises were finally coming through. A girl with pink eyes whispered to a friend that if only one person came true, the whole world would vanish. Minato feels a chill that makes his blood run cold as he desperately tries to find out exactly how many prophecy books are hiding in this world. Hiko was giggling as a whispering voice behind him told him about 200, making him laugh harder than it ever did before. He asked casually if that amount of words meant the universe itself would come to an abrupt end today. Midori gently tells the boy he can't see how many of them are still awake, so they all know he's safe. It's a strange feeling when you think about the story where the old ships come back and talk about how many people believe they'll see a prophecy. But then this little lilac-eyed girl comes along with her friend who found that mysterious book of doom, making it seem like an adventure is really happening right now. Barnard Russell's little brother had a very special nickname. Did she ask him to tell her exactly what happened as soon as he pulled open that very first page? The big explorer blinked, and his eyes went wide with wonder. He had brought 2 things to greet the reader, his own name and a fresh look at the book. There was an odd hole in the middle of Sumida Japan, that anyone can see. The little girl runs toward the door with a sharp run and jumps over the guardrail, while the officers hesitate and look around for anyone moving inside before they turn back toward the main hall. The young woman spoke of the Third World War and how it turned into a nightmare involving a dark moon and a biological invasion. But those terrible disasters were finally settled by powerful, transcendent powers. In reality, Midori has been taking care of that chaotic scene for quite some time now. No matter what happens, the Book of Doom doesn't stand alone as the final word on prophecy. Instead, it sparks a whole new kind of story, just like that one. The counter-prophecy unit wasn't built for a few years. It was designed from the start to stay right here today. A high-stakes job system kicks off at level 1 and escalates to the global annihilation, covering everything from local neighborhood threats all the way to total cosmic doom. Minato asked if they should go to the rift so they can stop the other prophecy, and the girl nodded that it is perfectly fine for CPU members. The man in the suit sensed the crowd approaching and quickly alerted everyone that he was part of a group, perhaps strangers or friends who hadn't seen each other yet. A man stands firm behind the others, knowing exactly how dangerous this situation is, while a young girl jumps in and says she's just trying to protect them from something bigger than that. It was all written into that golden poetry anthology, a mysterious third-class prophecy book, and she told her friends it sounded like the most exciting story ever told. As soon as the rift opened, the girl shouted that everyone went absolutely silent and didn't know exactly what was going on. Suddenly, huge monsters burst out of the darkness. Karasagi swings his staff and presses himself firmly against the ground, locking onto the fight with a fierce intensity that shakes the very air around him. The man steps into the room and pulls out his gun, ready to fire the very first barrier. The humans have been screaming for a long time as those wild humanoid wolves start destroying everything around them. He found himself realizing his own limits were far too high for even the best players on B or C level to cope with, while he also felt a sudden shiver of dread as the energy in the room seemed off. The boss monster is about to burst out and make things even more bad. He looked at them all while the stranger caught his eye. He looked at them with those gentle, calm eyes that made him feel like he was watching a story unfold in perfect harmony. Kurosagi said the world has no excuse for those civilians being left behind. Ignoring the guy, she pulls up the Trismegistus and sees what a beautiful thing he's got. As she held out her hand, a shimmering liquid metal rushed in, instantly melting into sharp, glowing blades that danced around the tip of her finger. The wolves charge at the crowd, yet her spear hits them hard and stops them before they can reach anyone else. She vanished into the shadows as the last beast remained dead behind her. Time flies when a big yellow bolt hits the sky. Ko jumps right into the crowd and makes everyone run away from him. Kurosagi felt a sudden surge of pride as he saw those figures with terrifying power beside his own weak sidekick. The purple-eyed girl told him, "Right now, I'm just a regular guy who isn't one of you." Suddenly, as the man peered closely at the strange markings on his own skin, he immediately suspected that these were not random marks, but signs of something far worse. A government organization with massive, terrifying claws and eyes more dangerous than those of smaller evil wolves emerging from the rift. Even the realization that this was a big problem finally hit them with all the weight of reality. It looks like a dangerous beast named Guile that is fighting for its life. The fireflies in the distance began to flash as Karase pushed through the crowd with trembling hands, her eyes wide and eager to warn those ahead of her that danger was imminent. Every enemy jumps out of their own way, using all their sides as weapons against the monster. Hiko's feet don't seem to be doing anything when he tries to strike the beast. He thinks the armor could survive any tough physical fight he might face. Giller Rennell picked up the girl and ran away with her. She wraps up every moment in a watery blanket so she can stay safe inside. Suddenly, a powerful figure named Minato steps into the frame right before the girl. A young boy caught in a storm of power was saved from a colossal beast as soon as he grabbed its hand. The monster pushes forward so hard that it breaks his protective shield instantly. The mighty blast shatters the world around us and makes everyone's eyes widen in wonder as the chaos ends. Hiko said, "It looks like we're going to do this all the time." He wondered exactly what Minato did to kill the S-rank beast with a single punch after sensing something strange on his morning. He finally understood that the boy had grown into something far more terrifying and powerful than anyone else, even in his own day. The purple-eyed girl broke the mood and told Minato, "You were about to act out of your way." The boy knew exactly why he was fighting so hard. He needed to build up his strength and smash the enemy's defenses before they could even strike back. Tong taught him how to use his hand-to-hand combat skill the very last minute before the fight started. Fist strikes are actually one of the simplest ways to get your punches started. Minato's eyes never leave the box as he watches it appear, and for a split second, everything stops to wonder if this sudden arrival could be truly useful. He pauses his thoughts and looks directly at her. He nudges her gently, asking if she'd rather share her name right away, so he can get started faster, because talking inside feels much safer than facing him out there. She laughs softly and takes his hand, introducing herself as Kong Shinomiya to make it feel like a friendly surprise rather than a serious meeting. He keeps kicking without losing a second of his own time. The other wolves are in pain because the purple-eyed girl threw a bucket of dirty water everywhere. She then grabbed a bottle of mercurial rejection and slammed it onto the table before tossing it aside with a dramatic sigh. The devastation hit hard as the blonde boy pointed to Minato and said, "That's right," and then he nodded in agreement with an inner shift, understanding now that attacking the monsters from the inside was the better strategy. She reached out and called the new guy. The moment your voice finally stops shaking and the screen goes black, that quiet silence feels like the only thing left in the room after a long day of waiting. Karasagi stares at that terrifying thought with eyes wide open, knowing his heart has already jumped for real while he was still in the room. Minato instantly clings to that shattered thought and steps into that other world. He stands still and stares at the ground with eyes wide open, clearly thinking he's lost in the dark. The three men he didn't meet seemed to fit that mysterious group of people he heard about before any real news reached his ears. More terrifying wolves burst onto the scene and start to charge. Aae sees his friends exactly like those who escaped from the rift. She sighs deeply, feeling like she can't find a way out of the troubles. The giant ship explodes everywhere she goes and turns into a long line of swords that chase the monsters down. Minato watches the girl with wonder while the blonde boy explains how her power lets her deal massive damage in a big attack. A massive, armored wolf steps into the scene with a roar of power behind him. She urgently summons Hio so he can step forward and offer his help. When a monster tries to jump, he decides to run first. The boy laughed and pointed at the rafters when they reached the top. Heiko's quick fire makes him a truly agile sniper. Minato was stunned by the performance that followed, and now it's his turn to play again. It feels like a game where the boy tries to outsmart the blonde kid by copying his moves every time. They love running around with a bunch of things and never waste any spare moment. An can't see where the road leads because he might meet a much bigger problem later on. Something makes the big vessel feel very unsure about what that huge, empty space is all about. Suddenly, a figure steps forward and grabs them by the collar, instantly drawing everyone's full attention to their movement. The heavy thud of their feet hitting the floor made the ground shake with a loud crash. Minato yelled, "It's massive and scary," while Heiko thought it was the boss. The monster war rumbled loud as they stood ready for the ultimate fight against a blind minotaur that was even bigger than anyone imagined. Ain looks very calm as she says, "It truly has become the master of this world." She didn't wait for anyone else's answer before summoning Trismegistus herself. As a massive shape emerges from the ground like a swirling cloud of golden smoke, the giant minotaur holds its breath and watches as it transforms into a perfect round ring around him. The blade starts to pull out of the glow, and it turns out to be a mighty Eldorado. She says there's a strict rule that never gets broken. Whenever a tough boss comes knocking, she doesn't wait. She just strikes hard and fast from the moment they first appear, so the fight ends right at the door. Heiko steps up on stage for his big moment. But as soon as he speaks, the crowd knows exactly who he is, a handsome guy with flashy talent. Meanwhile, the young girl stands right there with him, telling them to forget about it all and just get along. Minato watches the powerful duo from afar as they make their way toward the center of the arena. He's clearly spotted a bad idea and has made sure not to get caught in trouble for doing so. The blonde boy felt his heart jump when hearing the news about the girl's amazing power, but he gently asked if she was angry because he thought someone was criticizing her move. As it turned out, that powerful move didn't just make them realize the new guy might be right. It made everything else feel even more exciting. That mighty energy blast from the monster isn't just scary. It's utterly crushing and absolute destruction. He slammed his fist down and ripped open the heavy wooden door, sending a massive cloud of dust flying across the floor as he hit the target wall with one final, loud blow. Even though the monster tried to bite and hurt its hand, there was still no scratch visible. As that scary word finally lands in their minds, they wake up terrified and realize exactly where the real danger lies. Suddenly, that prodigy in the corner whispered, "I'm really talented." That makes the boy wonder if Killick is telling him something he doesn't really understand. The alchemist tells the story of how he shows her everything she has, spellcasting, precision, and style. Rarely seeing such incredible skills in someone so young. He says she deserves top marks for her strategy, and under normal circumstances, she could have easily defeated the enemy. He knew there was a problem. The boss didn't care if she ran into him. She only cared about fighting back. Minato looks over at the Minotaur and says, "Well, let's see what we can do." The old boy loved to watch his younger self grin instead of speaking back. The invisible conversation made Ho think the monster could be immune to magic, so he decided not to bring a spellcaster just for being awake in the first place. She wasn't even sure if he'd come on, because every time a guy walks around with a special accessory in his pocket, someone sneezes and laughs at them. Killick demanded that Minato take his body back so he could show the young lady something new. A mercurial launch gets even stronger. You have a liquid that refuses to let go of the monster and holds it still forever. The little girl's sudden jolt of cold makes her feel like she's been frozen in a sudden chill while watching the screen. The girl snaps and tells the man she has a problem with him using her power. Yet when the boy steps forward, the woman immediately asks what he's really aiming for. It's his joke that he calls her a fool, while he claims physical hits won't help him stop the attack. She laughs because he keeps explaining how everything ends up as a mess after all that work on just one topic. You can't just pretend to be an alchemist. You have to actually see how those things change when they're hot, cold, or compressed. And yes, you'll need your skills if you want to make a real difference. He had full control of the moon and gently warmed the fiery beast like boiling water, turning a cold creature into a blazing fireball. The villain unleashed a fiery blast that instantly melted his way through everything around him. He didn't realize that even thinking about controlling her temperature would make her laugh at herself. The alchemist stops to admire his new wand, which catches his eye with such an eager admiration that he immediately asks his student for help to perfect it into something far more valuable than just a stick. A monstrous shadow shudders as it finally lays down before disappearing into the darkness. The mission was to carry out that prophecy from the Golden Poetry Anthology. The mysterious Minato watched as his friends celebrated for finally knocking down the giant blind Minotaur boss. The mission has truly come to a close. Ain looked down at the cheering crowd and felt so lost that he couldn't believe exactly what was happening right now. So, she had a hard time believing that this mysterious man, Minato, could actually be someone else. The boy reaches out his hand while she can't even think about what to do next. A gentle smile sweeps across his face as he repeats the word, gently inviting Shinome to recall it once more. She felt really hurt that he said it, making him seem very mean. She has one last chance before she gives up completely. Meet Miss and Hiko. They're so thrilled because their best friend made him feel like he's finally joining the team. It felt like the world was holding its breath as Karasagi and his team stood frozen in the shadows, waiting for that last crack to finally close so they could step back out into the open. They're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. Suddenly, Minato bursts out of the rift. Hiko will be the first to walk out into the night, but her best friend is also there, ready to lend a hand while she gets settled in. The whole crowd gasped and stared at the survivors with wide eyes as everyone realized how far they had made it. It looks like the rift has finally closed, so everyone has to go tell the mission to be over. It was a call from Minato that turned into an explosion of cheers when Karasi shouted, "We saved you guys," and the crowd roared in praise for what he did just moments ago. A mysterious stranger stares at a crumbling building with wide eyes, wondering if he can break through the crack, but also knowing that no one wants him talking about what's happening right now. He stepped up and told everyone, "When I write this mission report, I just need to sketch out the things, so nobody will ever question what I wrote." She looks at him with a mix of surprise and warmth as he hesitates, knowing that nothing like this has ever happened before. "Okay," she says softly, letting his nervousness fade into confidence. The news sent a shockwave through the room because Karasi and his men could no longer leave behind this moment. Now, she told them they were truly safe for being found again. A red lightning bolt shoots through the sky as the man spots his own people and realizes they are just the locals here. There is something really weird going on there. At the computer's main office, AI orders a meeting for his team, but Hiko suddenly tells him that someone has already come up with a solution and is now in the lab waiting. You walk through the quiet hallway of conference room 3 and suddenly realize the wall behind you is completely silent, even though everyone else has been talking loudly all afternoon. She noticed the air felt like it wasn't quite right. Two people are standing together, and a red head jumps up to point toward a can in the middle of the space. So he decided to ask the captain for more details because he couldn't wait any longer after realizing that this mission only took about half an hour. Minato quickly recalled that he was actually part of this group, watching him for a moment before realizing his own mistake. The redhead looked down at him and smiled warmly, saying softly, Okay, relax. I'm not your boss." He stops talking and points directly at the screen while asking the director why they are called that first thing in the morning. Curry asked the others to stare at what the interpreter team sent him, and asked what kind of lump he found in the coal mine. He stepped forward and handed out his scroll to the crowd, as if they were waiting for a magic spell. A strange discovery happened near a massive volcano, making the puzzle nearly impossible to solve. That mystery caught Minato's attention immediately as he asked his friend for help on the way back home. The man said it was thanks to the new AI tech that finally cracked open the hidden text. The world was filled with everything, yet the single most important fact about Japan stood out to shock even the best storytellers. One wonders if this is the ultimate secret that everyone has been waiting for. A rookie wonders why the news isn't already out, but Hiko snaps back and says, "It was actually my first time hearing about this." It turns out CPU powers are actually a huge blessing for scientists because it allows them to collect real-world predictions from around the globe, but no one ever saw something as magical and unprecedented before. Shinji tells the director that he already knows how to get the 4 people to help him figure out what to do. The man nodded and told everyone that the regular members would need to go into action for the actual strike, yet he explained it's a temporary measure while they're still on their own missions. He decided that since those 4 were ready, they should run the first round of the prophecies investigation together, so he could send him a detailed email right away. They are so surprised that Minato is sending them off for a new adventure immediately. It looked like a normal day for the team, but as rookie Jake finally realized, the boss was actually asking him to take this role very seriously. The redhead stepped forward and immediately took charge of the group, calling them all his immediate team, while the purple-eyed girl felt the wind in her hair. The prophecy has a blank slate on its face, so people are advised to stay low-key until something major happens. If the sign finally comes along, they'll have to hold back all hope for now while waiting for new troops to show up. Minad takes a deep breath as the mysterious mission catches his eye, instantly making his heart skip a beat. Ain laughed as Shija told everyone to rest so the crew wouldn't ruin their mission. Then his own voice rang out, "I'm not the boss. You don't even have to sleep." Even though the rookie stubbornly refuses to open their eyes and waits minutes, Hiko finally understands why they are waiting so long. They were asleep over their loss because they couldn't stop losing each other. She still pushed through the day and said she wasn't about to fall asleep. But the fight took a little while longer as the girl suddenly screamed her name and woke up startled by the alarm. Minato woke her up without a word, and she was surprised by his sudden silence. Then the rookie stepped forward to make sure she looked around before anyone else could come in. It looks like something very strange is happening right now. Confused, she stares at the man and asks, "What does he mean?" The sky isn't empty. It's covered in a patchwork of strange, vibrant scarlets that seem to jump out from the clouds everywhere you look. Hiko said that the topic was actually quite serious. The prophecy isn't far away yet. The moment it happens, things will change forever. On said this was the biggest magical circle she had ever encountered, and those specific columns contained exactly where the 23 missing villagers were found according to the report. Shinji found something so strange that he looked up to see exactly how close a hole had almost been to opening into another world. Suddenly, the columns began to glow brightly. Aang noticed the moment and immediately shouted that wasting any moment was pointless. Hiko looks up with a look of surprise and asks, "What's going on?" Shinji grabs his gun and shouts, "We'll definitely stop this prophecy." A's voice echoed back to the director, reminding him exactly what he had just said. A sudden wave of energy rushes past him, startling the group behind. Every time that mighty power flows through Minato's aura, the story feels stronger. A friendly smile lights up the room and prompts the boy to ask, "Are we finally ready?" The lilac-eyed girl is stunned by how strong he really is. Shinji looked at the screen and said, "There's no reason to wait." He lunged forward and shouted, "Follow me." The tall canyon lets him know his leader isn't in charge until the moment he steps into the seat. The rows in the sky aren't quiet anymore. They're glowing with a much brighter glow. The mage paused, letting her eyes drift back toward that old smell. Even Raichiro felt a familiar knot of worry in his chest, knowing they'd heard the same thing before he was dead. A heavy tombstone finally gives way, sending a bright red light shooting upward. Then below, a terrifying hand reaches down to grab it. The smell that the ancestors smell is from a forbidden spell. The shadowed path ahead might fade, but when the beast truly wakes up, it won't go anywhere else. It'll have to journey deep into the dark after all. Meet the transcendent and master sorcerer Shurajima Bando. He had killed many people in the final battle, but his brave friend stopped him with his magic and won the fight. It looks like the traveler came to that quiet village and told everyone he only had some spare moments left. It's going to take 1,000 years for him to wake up again. So soon enough, fate will bring him back to become the demon king who rules the entire world and eats everything that exists. Before he goes down to sleep, Shima Bando throws his face into the flame of a forbidden magic, offering up all his friends and family as a sacrifice so he can finally rise again tomorrow. The mission's goal is simply to stop a prophecy that has finally been written down in the Book of Hell. The mysterious grade that defines your next fight leaves Shima Bando standing at the top of the stairs, waiting for you to answer her questions. The sorcerer was a bit surprised when the dead king returned alive and gave him such a tiny amount of power, which made him feel like he needed to make even more sacrifices to keep it all together. The darkness deepened as time itself seemed to turn into shadow. He still feels like a hungry beast lurking around the corner. The darkness within his own heart suddenly glows bright red as he flips the switch, and a devastating shockwave of pure black power erupts from the center, instantly crushing everything around him. Minato stammers in fear as he hears worried call out. But the words echo back with a strange urgency, making him realize that the worry isn't just about losing them. It's a warning of something far worse coming at the very same moment. Pico was trying to calm his friend down by telling him not to worry about the other two. The new guy is whispering that something scary is hiding right below them. They hadn't even heard anyone speak when hands appeared from that magical circle, catching everyone in their very breath, just as a deadly ability seemed to erupt around them. They were trapped by an invisible wall and wondered why the monster used so many spells all at once without waiting for anyone to react. The sorcerer holds a terrifying power that makes fighting him nearly impossible. Shima glanced nervously toward the corner of his eye and saw something. Minato leaps up and swings his bat hard toward the boy, but the kid ducks effortlessly before he even clears the line. Heiko tries to smash the door with a similar force, yet it doesn't budge. The sorcerer watches from above, noting that the boy lacks the skill to crack the glass before he even opens the lock. A sudden burst of bright light erupts in the scene, as if something huge and powerful has just been unleashed into existence. The boss suddenly sees something off in the middle of the meeting and snaps his head into the air, realizing with alarm that something has gone terribly wrong. Minato easily escaped his trap with the help of Hadad, a skill so simple and powerful that even beginners can master it. Even though the sorcerer struggles to hold back his magic, he manages to protect himself from a surprise attack. The boy swings wildly and finds himself trapped high above the trees, his little legs dangling like twigs against the heavy oak branches that never let him down. Shajima didn't feel anything strange about not being bad. He knows exactly when to grab the perfect opportunity and let everyone else follow his lead. He silently drew his dagger and threw a marigold blast at the boss, just in time to stop him from taking the hit. The red-headed boy stood his ground with a fierce determination as he swung his sword, ready to crush the enemy down. But he jumps away and giggles, saying it was a waste of time. The boy found this utterly hilarious, yet the boss already knew he'd been tricked by a more dangerous plan. Instead of laughing, he immediately turned his attention to the autumn thistle and yelled, Okay, it's raining, just like in the movie. The scare went well, but as the boss tried to use the thistle's power to draw sword beams into multiple rays, the boy slipped out before anything else happened. Shinji holds up a solid shield as the sorcerer's blade cuts through the air, and the powerful man finally confirms that he is indeed quite strong. Minato is staring intently while watching a powerful figure, wondering exactly who it is. After all, his new self is totally unique and utterly stronger than any of his old foes, giving him a question in the dark. What does he really want to do? A mysterious voice in the hall calls out his own name, causing a group of friends to jump up and realize they are being rescued together by someone who knows exactly what they need to do. The canyon waits impatiently as Shima Bando demands everyone leave so he can see the rest of the world. He's building up a magical world with many different little circles in the sky. It was as if dark shadows began to rise from the stones, turning into hungry beasts of bone spirit. No matter how hard they try, their heart won't let go of this feeling yet. Despite failing at its first attempt, each one remains incredibly strong, far exceeding even that legendary Minotaur. They were counting as much more than 3 people when they started. Minato's hand was glowing and his face brimmed with that unmistakable sense of complete control. Shujima steps back as the poor boy watches him go. So, when the redhead finally takes off his coat to land on the ground, he tells himself that isn't the time for trouble and decides to do it all by himself. Suddenly, the man was forced to pull his feet away from the ground, as if he had been pushed by an invisible wall. You're a great problem for him. The red-headed man said everything he knew about life was his own power, so when the boss laughed along with him, they both agreed to do exactly that. So after every single one of them, that sorcerer has gone on extreme rampage and is completely ready to eat everyone involved. Shinji keeps pushing himself even harder to stand his ground for the fight. Once again, the old man calls out his name. Mano saw a strange beam of light and suddenly felt his heart jump for joy, as if he had been given a gift from heaven. As if magic itself was turning a dark corner into a blazing white light. The mark of the void finally burned bright enough to shatter reality. Shima pauses in wonder as she sees a boy standing on a cliff, clutching something that looks like ancient bone spirits he might have lost. The fight between the other two was going nowhere when the last one vanished entirely. Instead of fighting anyone else, he just knocked them all out and finally took the crown back in hand. The guy who was so strong finally got punched by the boss. The thunder roared in his ear, making the world spin around him as he felt a sudden surge of raw power. Shinji gasped as he heard the boy stop fighting by himself. The sorcerer carefully pulls out his own glass of wine. Minato remembered how everyone had to fight for one another against the evil boss. Then, as a huge full moon shone brightly over the battlefield, he felt his heart beat faster because he knew this was the only way forward. Shinji stared at him, completely stunned. It felt like Hiko and Ani were stuck in a corner while the monsters tried to leap over them, so they couldn't bring themselves to stop them from doing that fast thing. The battle between them never truly ends, so the redhead keeps asking the boy why he managed to pull it off without any struggle. Regardless of the situation, he won't try to help anyone fight together. Shinji smiled and said, "I don't need anyone's help. The guy who killed him isn't going anywhere until he gets his revenge." Shima thought the plan was flawless, so the sorcerer would be playing with him in a one-on-one match. Shinji managed to slip away before the punch could hit him, leaving the guard momentarily stunned and surprised by his quick reflexes. A dark wizard dives into the void with a spell so bright he almost turns the world upside down. So Minato flies off into the distance, and Shirjima laughs with joy at it. At that moment, Shinji got right back up and slammed his fist against the table, trying to make a comeback. The ground beneath him crumbled under the boss's might as Minato took a heavy blow from his own hand. Even though he's still trying to figure out what happened yesterday, he doesn't seem to mind anymore. Suddenly, he steps in the unknown room and starts asking, why? Rikiro blinked and saw a dark shadow swallow him before they could even begin his next move. Minato tries to scream a plea for help, yet his voice cracks into pure agony before he even finishes speaking. No matter who gets the win, that fight isn't going anywhere soon. He wants to go back there, but they're forcing the boy to pause before moving on. He was completely shocked when he heard that. The battle outside continues as Shima admits they both choose the same path, making Shin worry since he knows he lacks the power to stop it. Meanwhile, the sorcerer insists no one should be dragged into such a dangerous situation. He eats these monsters by himself because that is exactly how he wants to eat them. The boss unleashes even more terrifying power. The battle feels far worse now that he's wielding his new sword. He tries to sharpen his sword and then hits the opponent with a powerful blow. Shujima smiled and said, "I never felt quite as happy for a long time." Shinji holds on to every trick in his bag, while Raikiro points out that this redhead can actually fly past Hiko using a cannon. Yet he's not quite as strong as the sorcerer himself. The boy knows exactly how he can't do anything right anymore this second. The sorcerer revealed he was telling the truth about how the undead army decided to unleash the ultimate ancient spell, resurrection. He would be able to turn all his lives into demons if that crowded place had actually happened. Devouring Minato's soul made him even stronger, so she told him to only care about the boss's potential damage. There was a strange whispering coming out of nowhere when they first saw the mysterious prophecy. Yet, no one could have predicted how much more time it would take for Minato's destiny to unfold. Ryuro tries to take the man's arm and give him a fighting chance against Manhwa, but the old warrior simply won't let it happen. He said that the fight wasn't really training. It was something real and dangerous. He thinks in the future that every challenge he meets won't be designed specifically for his best skills, because he knows how to overcome them all. The boy lifts his hand high and looks at the masters with a bold, confident grin. But the wizard chose to wait, knowing that staying behind meant the danger would never pass again. The roar of Roro's laugh shattered his partner's resolve as he knew the boy was on the right track. With a fierce determination to crush every ancestor in his way, he pushed back his sword, encouraging his apprentice to pour everything into the battle. Ryu told him to take every single lesson he had and fight that sorcerer right out of the gate, because fighting isn't a choice if you're not already done with it. Minato promised he'd handle this himself. He turns to face those old guardians and immediately says he won't make them feel bad again. The boy sputtered and dashed after his friend to escape a terrible fight that was about to start. Raikiro feels absolutely thrilled because he is so excited about his student's determination. In this fierce fight, Shima laughs at how his rival is completely missing all his moves. He grabbed the opportunity and made his move to get another shot in the air. Shinji flung his arms wide and leaped away to try and hide from the worst thing that could happen. But the sorcerer says it's finally over. No matter what strikes her, that redhead won't let go anyway. He stares at the dark horizon and asks himself, will this truly be my final chapter? The air filled with suspense as a sudden, sharp tug pulled your blade back and threw you forward onto the dark floor. He was surprised by the sudden surprise. Minato asks the villain to lend him a moment before he pulls out his gun and runs off in panic. Shinji is trying to figure out exactly what that new guy has promised him about his deal. Every single day, he surprises him even more. As Minato rolls down the ramp, his momentum builds up until his feet touch the dirt, and he slides smoothly to a stop. Shima Bando is quietly locking onto the next move as the day goes on. The sky exploded with a blinding, cosmic glow as Minato unleashed his cursed Hinky-style blade, shattering everything in its path. He's about to swing a bit more aggressively this time, and with an air of surprise behind him, he unleashes the Sea-Torm slash that could easily knock over the entire tower. The sudden impact sends a shockwave through the air before his teammates can even react. The boy's incredible power makes an old wizard go wild and ask himself how he can ever stop it. Does this person look like a friend? Because he wants to find out if they're the one who can make his heart beat faster. Meet your new hero. He's Minato Kanagi, a man destined to beat every ancestor. She asked the swordswoman what they thought about the competition's winner, wondering how brave that opponent was. It was hard to tell if she actually wanted anything more than watching someone else smile. But for Raichiro, Minato isn't a fool at all. He's got more than enough to make anyone else cry. The man thinks the little boy might learn something new while taking his sleep training in the car. He beams with an enthusiastic grin, believing his apprentice has devised a clever strategy, while Minato remains determined to push forward in the battle. Shinji watched the rookie charge straight at the enemy. That incredible superpower made him move his blade so fast that he felt like a ghost. Even if the sorcerer couldn't figure out who this little boy was, he wasn't sure either. Shinji remembered that bratty partner who assumed they could work side by side, but a fiery redhead told him to be his own man and finish what the others started. It makes his mood get a bit flustered. Now, he's stuck staring at the fight going on around him, not even trying to help anyone else. Minato stands frozen as his red eyes glow with power, and a glowing orb of fire shoots out from his hand like a forbidden magic spell. The boy dodged those blasting blasts with a brave heart, but that sudden jump of energy makes him feel like he's being chased by something more powerful than himself. Minato knows these words are bound to keep him going even as they get closer, so he steps directly into the path of those who will attack next. A brave boy steps up and starts thinking of a plan. Takwon looks proud of what he's seeing. So after all, that student works super hard right next to him. The towering figure in Minato's shadow takes a heavy step onto the floor and flips his body into an aggressive stomp smash, raising a massive stone shield as a wall of protective force rises around him. This powerful defense stops the crimson blast from hitting the ground, yet the sorcerer looks on with disgust, thinking he is foolish for trying to block himself so completely against everything. Minato keeps his eyes tight shut as he watches the world blur by. He thinks he needs to build walls just to keep the bad guys away from his friends. A massive wall of smoke shoots up around the spot where the former loser stood, but Shurajima just smiles and keeps watching as it goes down. He learned a new trick by using a footstep and catching reflections of light on the floor, which gave him a distinct advantage in their game. He effortlessly slipped past the boss and got close by. Minato wasted no time cutting through the sorcerer's defense while he was trying to strike back. Shurajima Bando can't believe how tough this little guy is. He decides his next move will be the most terrifying circle of doom imaginable. Then he turns away and lets the world crash around him as Minato slips free from the storm. He really can't let his eyes go dark because without those solid foundations, he won't be able to build anything else on top of them. A hero steps into a deadly fight and instantly turns his back on a monster before he even gets to the ground, leaving the attackers completely helpless while another hits them right there. Shurajima thinks the boy isn't tough enough to be dangerous, even if those techniques are cool on paper. And then he asked that stubborn man just how many tricks he had up his sleeve, while the elders watched hard at their own work, guessing whether the boy was playing with fire or fighting ghosts. They didn't even believe he'd get better that quick. She stays locked in battle with the old friend as they fight back together. Shima Bando admits, "Oh, that boy's being entertaining." It's now time to unleash the forbidden spell, which instantly shoves the ancestors into a state of intense, high-alert vigilance. A Kaonite, still battling a bone monster, feels a strange thing coming about. A colossal mass suddenly erupts from the center of the war-torn ground. Her heart seems to stop in her chest as she realizes what happened. The towering three-headed skull stands as a living monument, bathed in the warm glow of flesh decay. A powerful sorcerer bows his head in defeat and says he can't handle the battle anymore, so his friends beg him to run away before they get hurt. He simply sits frozen in the corner, unable to hear a single word spoken after all those years because his voice is too weak to carry over. Minato knew the truth instantly. He couldn't actually fight Minato anymore, even though he had given everything he could. He's trying really hard to think up a new idea, even though he can't quite figure out what to do with it yet. The old wizard looked down at the boy and said, "Let's start with this spell, simple as the first one." Jera, the little flame tugged tight by his own wrist, was a bright spark waiting to burn. A little boy suddenly glows with a warm light in his hand, as if he found something precious inside. Hananoi fighting is all about how they look and how hard they hit the ground with their swords. Meanwhile, Sea Storm slashes are just those cool moves you can slice through any enemy. He drops the blade with a calm, unfeeling stare as he feels its life force hit him and must keep moving without showing even a bit of panic. Minato leans in with another hand, ready to strike. The man used to be a loser, but has turned into a fiery monster because he looked so different now. Even a wizard who knows magic would be surprised by how big this idea feels. Raikiro's eyes light up when they see the beautiful painting hanging on the wall, and for a moment, he feels as if he can feel it all through his own heart. Shirajima Bando had to step up immediately and handle every single thing that came his way. Minato Kani's new method could become something special when the gleaming slash finally cuts through everything. A sorcerer who barely held back was knocked down by a massive barrier that defied gravity, leaving him exposed to the very same fate that once threatened all of existence. Minato watched his master carefully as he explained how different forms of power work in life. Raikiro told his friend that the magical effect looked almost like a tiny, invisible strand trying desperately to cut straight through the tight pull in his magic, and he hoped Mateta would just share what he was really looking at. The boy was staring intently at something on the wall and felt completely absorbed in his attention. Shima Bando seems to be hiding the very last bit of his power behind a heavy wall of his own. The Manavas stare at a flickering lamp that burned like hellfire in a storm of total darkness. He won't burn out now. His fire stays incredibly hot and strong forever. And that was how he swung a shimmering blade, slicing through the towering bone structure and splitting the sorcerer right in two. He laughed at the surprise that he had finally left his masters to do something truly impressive in Minato. He mixes powerful sword moves with glowing spells in a way that feels like two worlds talking together. The alchemist startled his companions with a burst of excitement as he found everything so fascinating. Minato was thinking hard about the power that would make him a legend. Yet it wasn't just one thing. He figured it lay in learning how to switch effortlessly between different fighting styles whenever he needed to fight, but at first he only knew what to think about that specific concept. Rikiro found his companion oddly unusual, yet the mage insisted he was an alchemist. So if that were true, it would mean their entire assessment of their student capabilities turned out to be completely wrong. It turns out she asked her friend whether teaching Minato was wise, and he wasn't sure at all. The sorcerer was torn apart mid-sentence, but now a new thread had spun itself out of nowhere, filling the gap with liquid energy that seemed to grow faster than it did away. It lasted just a fleeting second before fading away completely. Shirajima Bando laughs with a grim smile as he hears the news. If I lose my brain, I'd be dead just by standing there. He decided never to let the bad thing ever happen again. Shinji showed up at the party earlier than he meant and brought a herd of chameleons that made everyone laugh before anyone could tell him how they were supposed to be there. It felt like Shima was losing a fight over his own heart when he forgot what to do and just watched Manhwa laugh away the whole time. The red-headed boy was still coming home. He saves his tired friend from a very tough fight. The sorcerer watches as a mysterious man named Shinja stands guard over an unconscious Minato who has fallen asleep. His face flickers into a new color right as he reaches for something. He was pulled straight into a nostalgic flashback. His arm aches from the coughing fever, and he wonders if the chill is coming on again. Then he tells Haru to stay back at home for an hour before dawn so we can clear up the air without any trouble. Shima laughed and said, "As soon as the sun comes up, I'll hunt for food," but Haru doesn't even blink. As if something was wrong with him, the old man called out, "Call my name," and immediately grabbed his hands before he could do anything else. The cart gently holds up the passengers. Shirajima struggles hard to keep warm and holds onto something warm while trying to stay safe in the freezing winds. The group of travelers brings a huge sense of joy to everyone around them. While the young guy thinks about how being by himself feels free and lonely, he is wondering why that very feeling of freedom causes so much pain. Shujima vanishes instantly into the air as if catching a sudden gust of wind, but then the redhead sees it and lets go his hold on it. Suddenly, he understands he isn't alone in this world. It just wasn't meant to be lonely for him. Suddenly, he sensed that something was wrong, and the situation wasn't as it seemed. They sprint past a bustling party where the girl shouts her name, So Taiko, and An can catch up with her. She checks Minato's condition while Shinji tells her he looks fine. She's grateful because she can see the lilac-eyed friend smiling right at her. Heiko feels a little sad, while everyone else seems fine at this moment, because it's really too young to party yet. The villagers are forced to stare at a wall that is slowly shattering into a giant bowl of liquid, stretching from their feet to their waists. But the danger isn't just about swallowing them in. If the pressure from inside bursts, they won't survive the collapse alone. They'll be crushed to death by falling over the edge. Shinji suggested that his powers could wipe out the threat, but now he knows they might not be able to. No matter what happens later, these friends still keep trying hard. You only need to be your absolute best to win. Minato steps out of hiding now, holding his sword high as if ready to face the whole world. The young star wakes up in his own room, staring at the empty bed and seeing the cool, calm shadow that defines his new identity. He didn't look like the kid who could always hold his own, because he was actually scared of the big one. He rests after a huge victory, knowing he'll always be praised by all who loved him most. The shield is shattering in every new crack as the battle rages on. Together, the Transcendent Ones use their powers with Reiki holding onto the Hanoi Cloud Beam Sword technique. A distant figure was sprinting away. The boss asked one guy about everything that's happening, and suddenly they knew exactly why. It was a wall standing in their way. They wonder if the road is truly over, even though something bright shines in their hearts again. In the stormy chaos of Minato, a bright light suddenly appeared and started expanding into the sky. Captain Makoto looked at the glowing white sphere in his mind and felt a strange calm settle over him as the truth about the universe seemed finally laid bare to him. All Makoto wants to know is,